Welcome to Gold Derby's Meet the Experts Film Sound Roundtable. I'm News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'd like to welcome back Mark Schoeckinger for John Wick Chapter 4, Mark Ulano for Killers of the Flower Moon, Steve Morrow for Maestro, Richard King for Oppenheimer, and Michael Semanick for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Thank you for joining us and welcome. It's exciting to have arguably the greatest collection of film sound talent ever to appear on the same Zoom screen. You collectively have 27 Emmy Award nominations on this screen and 7 wins between you.
Oscars or Emmys?
Oscars.
Oh, there you go.
You are quite the impressive group. Getting started, I'd love to know when it became your career goal to mix and design and edit sound for film and TV. When you were a kid, while other guys were focused on being a football player or a rock star, did you dream of being a sound guy? Start us off, Mark Schoeckinger.
Well, I don't know if it was really the path, but when I was a kid, long distance phone calls were really, really expensive. And so my grandparents who lived back east, our family would sit around in LA around a reel tape recorder, and we just talk. And we would talk about what our days were like, what we had been doing, and then send that tape to my grandparents who would record their own and send it back. So there was a lot of listening involved in trying to hear maybe through the words, as we'll say, maybe behind the words. And that was my first, I'll say, audio experience. Then beyond that, I was really fortunate to get into USC Film School, and there's a sound editor that we all know named Jay Wilkinson, who is the TA. And even though he could probably care less about us, there was something about what he did that really I found inspiring and really sparked my interest to really want to pursue this. So,
Steve, when did you know you were destined to work in the sound department?
honestly, I was in college taking film classes, and every project I had sounded terrible. So I tried to figure out how to make them better.
There's
And
honesty.
yeah, and then that's when I fell in love. I said, "Oh, this is great. I want to do this." And it turns out getting a job on low budget features in the sound department is much easier than trying to direct them or be a cinematographer. So yeah, so that was kind of my path. I went that direction. I fell in love with the art of sound and just the ability to, honestly, on set, not a lot of people know what you do. And so as long as you're doing it right and it sounds good, then you pretty much get left alone and get to do your job.
How about you, Richard?
I grew up making. I happily had a bunch of friends who we all made Super 8 movies when we were kids, and so I had a kind of a bunch of cohorts who were into the same things that I was. Music and recording things and making films and art. And I went to art school. I wanted to be in films. I wanted to do something in films, but I had zero connection to the film business. So I moved to New York out of art school, and just went door to door and kind of had to punch my way through concrete to start working on low budget films, and did about 3 or 4 years of low budget films, and eventually which included sound editing and little picture editing, and just the sound editing part was always the part that to me provided the most creative opportunities. I was cutting picture on very, very low budget films, very bad low budget films, and just to make a scene work was a feat, because the material I was working with was so poor. But when I got to the sound part, the sky was the limit. I could do anything. I wasn't limited by anything except my imagination. I just found that very freeing, and also just I felt like it added clearly added a three-dimensionality to the film that the film itself didn't have before. So I was hooked.
And finally, Michael, when did you decide sound was your destiny?
Well, when I was very young, my sisters came home and said, "Hey, we've got these tickets to a concert." I'd never been to a concert before. So it was general admission, went there in the Cow Palace here in the Bay Area, and it was a band called Paul McCartney and Wings.
Oh, yeah.
And I was there in the general admission, and I'd wandered off to this area in the middle of the room. And I saw these guys in this little cordoned off area with this big console in the middle of it. I didn't know what it was. I just stood there. My sisters were coming over. One of the guys came over and was like, "Hey," because I was just a little kid. I said, "What are you guys doing?" "We're mixing the music for the live show." And I said, "Oh," my sister, "where are you been? Where?" I wandered there, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm talking to these guys, and they're making the sound here for Paul McCartney." And she goes, "Oh," and I stayed there until the show was over, and then they were like, my sisters and their boyfriends came and said, "We got to go," and I said, "I want to do that when I grow up. I want to be a part of that."
So
And
basically, you can say Paul McCartney gave you your start in the business.
kind of did, or at least his engineers did. They didn't really give me a start, but they introduced me to what live sound was and how it was like, wow, how did this little band making all this huge sound? I had no idea. And then that just led to working in recording studios, recording Foley and ADR, eventually learning what film mixing was. And I just kind of fell into it the rest of the way. And I fell in love with just how sound is created, how it's recorded, and what you can do with it. And so it's fascinating to me almost every day, like how we do stuff, how you create things, how you can take one sound and trick the audience into thinking that a door slam is a gunshot if you have to. It's fascinating that
It absolutely
and
is.
how it connects, and I'm still in love with the whole process.
I'm going to ask you one more question here now. As sound professionals, I'm assuming you must watch movies differently than the rest of us. Share with us your favorite all-time sound on film. I'll go first. Mine is Whiplash, the 2014 jazz drumming movie from Damien Chazelle. It just blew me away, and I'm pretty sure none of you worked on that. So I'm not playing favorites. It can be something you worked on, though. Let's
Well,
go in reverse order.
I've
Start
gotta
with you,
jump-
Michael.
I got to jump off here, but one of the first films that I fell in love with the sound was Amadeus, and that was Mark Berger who had mixed that movie. I love some of the sounds Richard and I did on movies, like on Signs and stuff. I can go back and actually listen. Haven't in many times, but I listen and go, "Whoo, we did okay." And that's all I really want people to go, "Hey, that movie was great. Oh, and it sounded pretty good too." So, for me, Amadeus was something I thought sounded spectacular. And again, I was very young, but and as you grow in this industry, you learn your sound changes. You can look at Apocalypse Now, and then you can look at the movies coming out now, and like, wow, the sound has grown and become such more vast and dynamic, and it's fascinating. It's like symphony orchestras to me. So it's grown.
Great.
It has more dynamics. Anyway, that's me.
Thanks,
I got to
Michael.
jump off because I got to
You were
run.
dismissed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. You guys have a
Richard,
Bye, Michael.
All right. Bye.
Richard, what's your favorite movie strictly from a sound perspective?
I don't think I could pick one. There's so many.
Give me two or three.
I just recently saw The Killers and The Killer, and I thought that was fantastic. That's really stuck with me. Of my own, I'm really happy. I love the sound of Dunkirk. We worked very hard on that, and I'm very, very proud of it. And I try to watch a film and not think about the sound. It is hard, but I find when the sound is really working in a film, you're much more drawn into the film, and you're not sidetracked by listening to the sound or being distracted or being the sound jumping out at you in any way, good or bad. And I think that's a great trick that filmmakers have. Sound is kind of the filmmaker's secret weapon, because the audience assumes that all that sound was recorded on the day, and so as a sound designer in post-production, you can get away with a lot unless you go a little bit too far and show your hand and show the trick. Otherwise, they assume it's all real. And that's, to me, the kind of the best compliment you can get is if they don't notice your work, but they get involved in the film and get sucked in.
That is a huge compliment. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I've been racking my brain, but I think when I was younger, I won't age anybody here, but I watched Top Gun in the theater, and it's the first movie I remember surround sound, the jets flying over my head, and that just fascinated me that a movie that I'm watching on a screen could envelop me sound wise, and that was the first experience I remember hearing that type of mix, and it may be not the best sounding movie in the world, comparison, but for me that was the start of when I went, okay, this is incredible, theater sound, and sound is different in the theater, and so it's that movie holds a special place in my heart for the sound and just experiencing the surround sound.
And another reason why there's nothing like the movie theater experience, so different from listening it or watching at home.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And you, Mark Steckinger, what's your favorite?
Well, as Richard said, there's so many films that I think sound fantastic. Almost everything I see, I'm really impressed by the sound work that all the ideas that people come up with. But too bad he's not here. But I would say if I had to pick one, and this is hard, I would say Fight Club is my favorite sound job. There's something about that really the light bulb went off as far as being non-literal and experimental with sound that maybe I knew about, but I didn't really impress it upon me until I saw that film. And fortunately, I've had a chance to tell him that too. It's like that is one film that has really stuck with me as far as the use of sound in storytelling. So
I got a better one, The Exorcist. When I saw The Exorcist, that made such an impression upon me. And the first the first 15, 20 minutes in the Iraq sequence is almost all sound with very little dialogue. And the story is told so beautifully. And so it's so eerie, yet nothing really happens. And a lot of that story is told only with sound design. So, and that was a mono mix done in, I think, 1972 or 73. But it is a remarkable sound job. And when I saw it, it was one of the films that inspired me to realize that, sound is a thing. That is a thing. That's a creative endeavor. That's a form of self-expression.
You guys are all convincing me to start watching movies completely differently. I'm just going to be steady. The visuals are one thing, but it's so different when you're immersing yourself in what you're hearing. It really makes such a difference, and what you guys do is huge. I'm just going to ask you one more question briefly about the gulf between what people you meet think the job of a sound person is versus your daily reality. Do they think it's mostly about controlling a volume knob? I'll bet you get some pretty wacky assumptions. How about, let's start with you, Steve.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that everything we do is replaced because the behind the scenes shows the actor in front of a screen doing ADR. And so I think that they think that. And then also, it's basically just trying to explain, no, we're recording the actors. It's the center channel. Everything else is just kind of bonus material, but probably won't make it. But I think most people just think that we're, and a lot of time they just go, just radio mic them. You don't need to boom, we don't need to boom this. I'm like, well, the guy's shirtless and you have a wide and a tight shot at the same time. I don't know how you put a radio mic on him. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll just fix it later.
We'll fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post.
Richard, do people have any clue what a sound designer or editor does?
No.
That you meet?
No clue at all.
No.
I mean, it's very hard to describe. I mean, you just sort of have to show them. It's because, like I said, the assumption is there that they just recorded all that then, right, when they shot it. And yes, a lot is recorded, as Steve said, when they shot it. But there's all this whole other world that is brought in later, and the honest truth is, you don't want them to notice your work. You want them to think that it was all recorded on the day, and so in a way, it's sort of you're kind of undercutting your goal in pointing out, well, we did that and that and that and that. But no, I think people, even though years have been spent trying to explain to the audience what sound mixers do and what production sound mixers do and what sound designers do, I think it's still a bit of a mystery generally.
Mark Steckinger, what do people think you do all day?
In a way, I don't want to know what they think I do all day, but ultimately, but when it comes to sound design, I mean, that's a phrase, frankly, I don't really care for that much, because and to explain what they know of sound design, frequently filmmakers like, could we do some sound design for that door close? Like, sure, they're not talking about something non-literal or particularly interesting. They're just looking to cover a sound in the movie, but use that term to refer to it. So I guess it's my opportunity to say that there's something about that term that I'm a little bit wary of, because it gets overused as far as what is design, what is conceptually unique or additive to the track.
Well, we're going to have to wrap things there, gentlemen. Once again, our esteemed panelists have been Mark Steckinger for John Wick Chapter 4, Mark Ulano for Killers of the Flower Moon, Steve Morrow for Maestro, Richard King for Oppenheimer, and Michael Semanick for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Gentlemen, best of luck to you this coming award season, and thanks for joining us at Gold Derby.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you very much. It's really
Good to see you all.